what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Battlefield Project podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Rhoda, and this is the podcast for people who understand that life is a battle and only the strong will thrive. I am joined by my good friend who I've known for years and years and years, but it's the first time catching up face to face, so if we're acting giddy, it's because we haven't seen each other in forever. Brian Wright. I'm going to introduce Brian in a minute, but before I do, I have one favor to ask. If you watch this episode and you get any value out of it, so if it touches you in any way, makes you laugh, smile, think deeper about something, question life, whatever it is, and you feel like this was a good episode, please share it with friends and family. Or if you just watch this and you're like, yeah, man, my brother or my mom or someone I know would benefit from hearing this message, please share it with them. The whole goal of this podcast is to basically inspire people and let everybody out there know that no one goes through life untouched. We all have our battles that we fight on a daily basis. Winners fight their way through those battles, and that's why they end up happy. And losers let those battles defeat them, and they play the victim card. So this podcast is all about my guests coming on here and sharing some of those battles, hopefully inspiring you out there to fight your way through those battles and to live a happy, fulfilled life. So without further ado, let me introduce my friend Brian here. He is a writing coach, ghostwriter, radio show host, magazine publisher who helps people share their message with the world and monetize their expertise. With extensive experience as a college instructor, he has created and implemented strategies to help people craft their stories. His best-selling book series, Success Profiles, Conversations with High Achievers, has featured celebrities such as Kevin Harrington, Chris Powell, Jack Canfield, Marshall Silver, Sharon Lechter, Tom Ziegler, and many more. He has been featured on the nationally syndicated TV show The List, as well as Entrepreneur, Authority Magazine, The Good Man Project, and numerous podcasts. If you haven't, I'm going to put all these notes in the YouTube description at some point with all the links and stuff. Absolutely follow this guy on social media. Listen to his podcast. How long have you been doing podcasts? I feel like you were like one of the first people I ever met that was doing podcasts, and you were getting like big names on right away.
Yeah. My 11-year anniversary show was on January 16th.
Insane. So yeah, this guy's been doing it for a while. So I'm like 35 episodes in. How many episodes are you? Hundreds at this point, I'm guessing?
Number 500 will be in about a month.
That's impressive, man. So Brian, man, thank you for being here. I appreciate the friendship. I appreciate you being a guest on the show, and I'm excited to hear about some battles that you fought your way through in life, man.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here.
Absolutely. So the floor is yours. Any battle that you want to discuss with our audience and kind of why you fought your way through it? The floor is yours.
Well, there's certainly more than one. I think we can all point to a lot of situations.
Yep.
I will say that as I was starting my radio show, I was working in a call center, and I didn't really know how I was going to use my radio show to build a business. I just knew that it was something that I wanted to do. And ever since I had moved out to Arizona, which I'm not in Arizona anymore, I spent 26 years out there, but I was just trying to find my way. And the call center world was the low-hanging fruit. And I felt like any position in any company that was, a lot more well thought of, the competition was fierce. They take their sweet time, and I needed to make money right away. So I just grabbed whatever I could find. And I found that I was pretty good at it. I wasn't really fulfilled, but I also found that there's a lot of instability too. So as I was starting my radio show, I was renting out my home as an Airbnb because I couldn't afford my mortgage anymore.
Yeah.
And so it's a real creative way of monetizing your home. And thank goodness there was such a thing as Airbnb. In fact, first of all, actually, at that time, I was renting it out on Craigslist because I didn't know what Airbnb was yet.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And Craigslist is so hit and miss. I mean, you interview people and you tour their home, and sometimes they'll be very happy right away. And sometimes they'll ask stuff like, why isn't the pool heated? Well, it's February and our HOA voted not to heat the pool. Well, I don't want to rent from you then if your pool's not heated. Well, okay, bye.
Yeah.
I had one lady who wanted to rent from me. She wouldn't tell me or couldn't tell me how long she planned on staying, but she wanted me to move my stuff in storage so that she could move her furniture in. I said, wait a minute. You don't want to store your stuff in storage, so you want me to pay to move my furniture, put it into storage, and pay to move it back when you leave, and you're not even committing to me how long you plan on staying.
Yeah.
No. People ask for some crazy things, and so you learn to sift through that, and you keep your antennas up, and that some people are just crazy. But I rented my place out. And there was one winter in particular where I was renting it out and I ended up in the hospital. And I had H1N1 swine flu virus and pneumonia. Now, I didn't know
Huh.
what was going on at that time. I just know that I was staying with a friend because he was gracious enough to let me stay with him. And I slept on his couch. It was a one-bedroom apartment. I slept on his couch. I still paid half the rent. I was just happy and grateful for a place to stay.
Mm-hmm.
But I was lethargic. I would leave work early, even though I was working only at a 5 hour a day job. And my appetite was almost zero. And thankfully, my parents were in town for the
Mm-hmm.
winter. But I went to an urgent care and they prescribed a Z-Pack for pneumonia. Well, 3 days later, it wasn't getting any better.
Mm-hmm.
And I had half a stick of bacon for breakfast. And I said, I'm full. And dad said, there's something really still wrong. You need to go back to the doctor. So I went back to urgent care. Next thing I knew, I was in the hospital,
Wow.
in the ER. And they said, we got to run all kinds of tests. And the lady said, we're going to test you for everything. We have no idea what we're testing you for, but you're going to be here a while. I said, oh, you mean like a few hours?
Yeah.
No, sweetie, a few weeks,
Wow.
maybe longer. And I had no idea what was going on. I just knew that I was laying in this bed in the emergency room, and my parents were there at that time. And I just, I was just going with it. I was miserable. I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
But eventually I ended up in a room. And every time the nurses would change shifts, I kept hearing them say he had respiratory failure. And by this time, I was on an oxygen machine.
Huh.
And it was during it was like this week
Yeah.
in 2014. So all that was on TV was Super Bowl. I remember very clearly because that was the year the Broncos and the Seahawks played, and it was a terrible, terrible game. It wasn't competitive. I don't know who you're rooting for, but it wasn't a
Yeah.
competitive game. So it was
Yeah.
just a bad game. Thank goodness Bruno Mars performed at halftime because that was the only redeeming thing of the whole day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just crazy. And as I laid there, I thought, what do I want to do when I'm done, when I'm out of here? Because I wasn't thinking about the possibility that I would never leave. That was presented to me later. I was told, you're very lucky to still be alive because
Wow.
that's how bad it was. But I started thinking, you know what? I treasure my family and friends. I'm aggressively thankful for everything, and I take nothing for granted. And I just started thinking about all the things that I wanted to do in my business and in my life when I got out. And so I started thinking forward. That's how I got through that experience.
Yeah.
Instead of wondering and regretting the things that had happened up to now and trying to figure out why I was there, I just started focusing on what I could do next because that was the only thing I could choose. And so I
Awesome.
was just focusing on healing, and I prayed a lot, and I just knew that God was taking care of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up getting out in 2 weeks. And they did tell me that I was their miracle patient because out of the 26 people in that hospital during that time, I was the only one of those that did not have to go on a ventilator.
Wow.
I know, it was crazy. I had no idea. There was a young personal trainer guy who was on a ventilator who had the same
Wow.
thing I did.
Yeah.
I consider myself to be very, very lucky. I went
Yeah.
home to my parents' RV, stayed with them for 3 weeks. I was on oxygen. I had to pause my show for 3 weeks because 3 months, excuse me, because I was physically unable to talk. I couldn't carry a conversation. I would be physically exhausted within literally a minute.
Just talking.
Just talking. I
Wow.
couldn't because my
Yeah.
lung strength wasn't anywhere near what it needed to be.
Yeah.
And in the days after the hospital, I started gradually gaining that. And oh gosh, probably 3 or 4 weeks later, I was able to go back to a job. Um, but yeah, it was very, very interesting
Yeah.
that happened. And meanwhile, I was still renting my place out and staying with people staying on their couches. And sometimes I would sleep in my car because I didn't have anywhere else to go. And in some points in time, in fact, I
Yeah.
did spend an entire winter sleeping in my car in Arizona.
Wow. Yeah.
As long as I had a winter coat, 2 pillows, and 3 blankets, I was good to go.
You can survive it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I had a desktop computer at the time, not a laptop, so I couldn't carry that around with me. So I was completely at the mercy of when the public library was open.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you fought your way through that entire
I
experience.
fought my way through it. Ended up having to sell my home not long after that because somebody ratted me out to the HOA because apparently Airbnb rentals were not allowed.
Yeah.
So someone ratted me out. I had to cancel $6,000 worth of future reservations that day. I cried. That was a
Oh,
hard day. I hated it
yeah.
that day. But I knew that something was going to happen that was going to eventually benefit me.
Yeah.
And so then after that, not having a place to go, I slept in my car that summer. And then I eventually rented an office and was able to set up shop and was still working for other people at the time. But I finally, in 2017, I believe, I was on my own. And
Yeah.
I had already worked with you because
Yeah.
we worked together on your book,
Yep.
and that's another cool story. I don't
Yeah,
know
it is.
if your audience knows that story, but I had declared that I was going to help people write their books,
Yep.
and you came along and said, I don't have money and you don't have clients. Will you help me for
It
free? And I will give you a great testimonial, which you did. And we worked together and it was brilliant. It was awesome. It
was
was fun.
awesome. Yep.
Yeah. And I was just so grateful that no one had asked for a sample of my work yet.
Yeah. Yep. Samples will come, right?
Yeah. And they did. And they
Yep.
did. And so I have multiple projects on my plate now. So I'm happy and grateful for where that is. But you know, when you keep going and you don't give up, the way will eventually light up for you. It's like driving down a dark highway. You don't see your destination in the dark. You
Yeah.
can only see a few hundred feet in front of you or however far your headlights will go.
Yep.
And when you reach that destination, you'll see the next few hundred feet in front of you. And so it's really a step of faith
Yeah,
all the way
absolutely.
along. All the way along, it's a step of faith. And so uh, um, it's been a very interesting ride. And so now I help people write their books. I publish a magazine. I have done my radio show now for over 11 years, and I'm just happy and grateful to help people make an impact. And one day I will tell my whole entire story. What I've done in some of my other books that I have written for myself is I've woven stories from my past into whatever that book was.
Yeah.
But I haven't done like my autobiography yet. I haven't done that yet. Maybe I will
Yeah.
someday.
Do it now, man. That's
Yeah.
what you just never know. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you never know. You said, which I've never heard it expressed like that. And I'm going to start using the phrase aggressively thankful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm aggressively thankful for it. I'm like, that's fucking awesome. Like, because
Yeah.
I'm a very grateful person. I'm thankful, like, and I express that, and I'm happy to. But I've never. Usually, you hear the word aggressive, and you think like it's got a negative connotation. It's like, oh, he's
Right.
like they're aggressive. Oh.
Yeah.
But when I just heard, I'm like, that's a phenomenal way of saying like
Yeah.
how grateful you really are. It's like
Yeah.
aggressively thankful.
I had some kickback over the combination of those two words together, and I decided to just play it off like,
Yeah.
well, thank you for your feedback.
Yeah, if it doesn't resonate with you, fair enough. Like it
Yeah, fair
100%
enough.
resonates with me and others, so to
Yeah,
each their
you're
own.
not required to agree with me.
Yeah. And the
And
other thing is,
it's even okay if you keep scrolling and don't say anything at all. But of course, some people have to
I
say
think,
their
yeah,
thing.
I'm gonna say they have to let the entire world know every time they're offended by something. So,
Right.
and the other thing you said too, which I think goes to the point where you just talked about driving down a dark road, is
Mm-hmm.
when you were laying in the hospital, you were thinking forward. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think that is such an important part. And Zach Williams in Apex.
Mm-hmm.
He was on my podcast last week, and he was in his motorcycle accident, was laying in his pool of blood, and he said what kept him alive in that moment, instead of closing his eyes, his life flashed before his eyes, but it wasn't like all the things in the past and like what he might miss because of what was there and behind him. It was seeing the vision for the future. So it's very similar to what you just said in terms of thinking forward. So you weren't laying in the hospital bed being like, "What was me?" or thinking about
Right.
all the stuff in the past. It was like, what am I going to, by fighting my way through this, what do I open up? What doors do I open up for opportunity in the future? My future self gets to enjoy because I'm going to fight my way through this and get to the finish line. That's
Right.
such a powerful thing. I think people don't understand just how important that is to
Yeah.
know what that vision is and to see it and to know that that's the direction you're going. Whether, like you said, you're in the dark road and you don't really know how long it's going to take to get there,
Right.
irrelevant. Like, know the destination is out there and you're going to keep, step by step, everything, like it just brick by brick, you're going to get to that destination at some point because you're always moving forward. You're always thinking
Right.
forward.
Right. And you're happier that way.
Yep.
If you focus on the stuff that you can control, which would be choices that you can make in the future, that's one thing. But if you're stuck focusing on the past, which you cannot change,
Yep.
you're gonna be miserable.
Yep.
And Abraham Lincoln said people are about as, happy or miserable as they make up their mind to be.
Yeah. I don't know if you're comfortable talking about, but what you just shared with me prior to us hitting the record button, if that's public knowledge, or like, I think that battle is one that, and we don't have to get into it, but what the decision you made to go take care of a loved one
Yeah.
is beyond admirable. Like I watched my mom be a caretaker, and it's hard. It's a hard role to play, but
Yeah.
I feel like in service to others, and especially, someone very close to you,
Yeah.
is one of the greatest gifts you can give them on this earth.
Yeah. So my dad passed 2 years ago, and I was still out in Arizona when this happened. And over the following months, I made a commitment to call my mom twice every single day. And
Mm-hmm.
I succeeded probably 98% of the time at doing that.
Yeah.
And so just helping her navigate through stuff. Have you taken care of this? Did you pay this bill? Or did you resolve this question? Or did you ask somebody to answer that question for you?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And even so, she still forgot to pay bills. And I realized about a year ago now that maybe it might be a good idea for me to come home for a few weeks and just get a lay of the land. And so last year in April, I came home for 3.5 weeks. And I realized at the end of that time, I really need to move back home permanently. So I did. And it took me a month to organize myself, sell everything in storage. I was trying to sell it at first and nothing was really selling. So I just, when they got rid of it, but I went to 2 Apex events in May/June and trying to run my business and taking client calls, having book sessions with my clients, and trying to focus on getting rid of all of my stuff and minimizing to the best of my ability.
Mm-hmm.
And right before Memorial Day, like in the span of 3 weeks, from the time I got back to Arizona to the time I left Arizona permanently was only 3 weeks. That was no small trick, by the way.
Yeah.
But I loaded up everything else that I had in my car. I shipped all my books home. I wasn't willing to give up my library.
Yep.
So I shipped all my books home, spent probably $1,100 doing that, but I did it.
Worth it. Yep.
Yeah. Everything else fit in my car. I went to MDM in Dallas, $1 Million Mastermind, got there about a week early and stayed in Dallas that whole week, worked, went to the event, stayed for a couple of days afterwards. And by June 8th, I was back here. And so I've been home for 8 months now.
Yeah.
And just being with my mom, I'm staying with her, and
Yep.
we have all our meals together and we run errands together, and I help her remember things, and I've taken over paying the bills. I've got my name on her checking accounts as an authorized user, and so I pay the bills now.
Yeah.
Take her to a doctor's appointments and whatever else. Take the dog to the groomer.
Yep.
And just help her. Now, does it disrupt my business day? Yeah, it does. But when I have a scheduled call, I say, I have to do this. I'll help you after we're done. But otherwise, if something comes up, yes, I can put down what I'm doing and help.
Yeah.
And so my days frequently get a little discombobulated, but that's okay. I mean, I can lay down boundaries, but she won't always remember that there are boundaries. And so I just gave up doing that. It's like, sure.
Yep.
And
I think that says, God.
Yeah. I was going to say, I've gotten the "you're a good son" thing a lot, and I received that.
Yeah.
I think Dad would be very proud of me for moving home from my life and doing this.
Yeah. I mean, I was just going to say that. So yeah, you get it a lot, and let me be like the 1,000th person say to, and not even like good son. Yeah. Like, cause that's the role we're talking about specifically that you are in this situation. But like, it says about like how good of a human being you are. So yeah, good son, but like a good human being above like the role of son. Like I don't know how many people would drop their life, like give up what they've created as their life and say, okay, like my mom needs me. I'm going to like go sacrifice some of like my own freedom and wishes and dreams for myself over here. And I'm going to go over here and take care of them for as long as it's necessary. It just says so much about you, dude. Like I respect and admire that.
Thank you.
I respect and admire what you're doing in the business world with like your podcast and your books and all that stuff that you've been doing for so long. And this doesn't diminish that at all. But like this says so much more. Like, anybody can have a podcast, not as like successful as yours, but like anybody podcasts, and people have businesses, and there's success is defined so many different ways. I think what you're doing right now is like the premier definition of success in life is being there to love and serve others, especially those that loved and served you their entire lives. Like it's a very admirable
Exactly.
thing.
Thank you. Yeah. And when family first is one of your top core values, the decision makes itself really easily.
Exactly right. Yep.
Now, that being said, I've got some things coming up in my near future that could potentially take me away from home
Yeah.
more, which means that I would probably have to make arrangements to have people kind of check in.
Yep.
So we'll manage that when we get to it. When
Yep.
when that bridge comes, we'll figure that out. But
Yeah.
I've got some really exciting things coming up that I really can't share yet, but
Okay.
life-changing stuff,
Awesome.
especially as it pertains to expanding my brand.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
How many books are you currently working on for people right now? Or how many books did you help people write since me way back in the day? I don't even remember what year that was, but it
You know
feels
what?
like forever ago.
2016, I suppose. I haven't really counted.
Yeah.
I don't have that ego.
Yeah.
There are some people who I was their ghostwriter. There are some people like yourself where I was their coach,
Yep.
and you did it with some guidance. In fact, I saw a post, one of my clients, is seeing the final proof of his. I mean, I did our coaching sessions,
Mm-hmm.
and we hadn't talked in a few months, and now all of a sudden he's ready to launch. And so we didn't even use up all of our sessions, but I'm really proud of him for
Awesome.
having he's got a hardcover of his book. He's going through the final proof before he launches, which I'm
Yeah.
super excited for him. And then there are some people that start with me and don't finish
Yeah.
for whatever their reasons are. I
Yep.
mean, I know it's been dozens. I mean, and I've done collaborative books with people who have
Yeah.
done have been involved in some of my book projects where they chip in chapters. I mean, I've worked with well over 100 clients,
That's awesome.
probably closer to two, I guess. I'm just guessing. I haven't even counted.
Yeah.
But I've worked with a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's really fun when they refer people back to me later.
Yeah. And even that, like the catalyst of change that you are in that example, that like, because a book can change a life. So if you're helping people, let's call it 100 people, you're helping 100 people put their story out there and lessons out there for others. And each one
Yeah.
of those books finds 5 people that it changes their life. And then those people's lives change other lives because they've read that book. Like the amount of positive ripple effect that's out there because of that kind of stuff that you're doing is also incredible.
Yeah. And doing a weekly radio show, it's a live radio show.
Yep.
Where, I have thousands of people who listen to that, and I let people contribute articles to my magazine. So I'm reaching people in a lot of different ways. And some of those people are consuming all that content. I love when Superfan buys everything I do.
Yeah. It's just like, sweet. Like I'm doing something right because this person can't get enough of it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Awesome, man. I appreciate, like I said, I appreciate our friendship. I appreciate the person you are, what you're doing in this world, your tenacity. Like as long as I've known you, let's call it, I don't know, 10, almost 10 years now, probably. Like you're one of the people that I like just keeps going. Like you said, even like the dark road, driving the car, now like, moving back with your mom and stuff, like you keep going. Like you're one of those people that life can punch you if it wants, like, okay, like that hurt, but here we go. Like pick myself back up, brush myself off, and keep fighting the good fight. And I wish everybody embodied that mentality.
Thank you. And for anyone that's been toiling in the battle for a long time and doesn't feel like they're seeing any results, remember what bamboo trees are like. You plant a bamboo tree seed and you have to water it and nurture it for years before it even starts to pop up out of the ground. But once it pops up out of the ground, it grows really fast.
It's an awesome point, dude. Yeah.
It grows really fast. And so people think, oh, overnight success. No, you didn't know me when I started this a decade ago.
Yeah.
I've been through some stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, went through a bankruptcy. I went through a short sale. I went through selling my home when I could no longer afford to keep it. I lived in my car. I had a life-threatening illness.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
And on and on. And I'm still here. Thank God.
With a smile on your face and using the words aggressively thankful. Like it's an awesome. Like how much better can it be? Where can people connect with you, Brian, if they want to listen to your podcast, buy books or whatever, just connect with you on social media to like be inspired by you? What's the best way to do it?
Well, if they want to hear my radio show, it's called Success Profiles Radio. You can listen on Apple Podcasts, iTunes. I think it's also on Spotify. Okay. You can ask Alexa or Siri to play Success Profiles Radio, and you can hear the most recent episode immediately.
Awesome.
Leave a review. That'd be great. If people want to learn more about writing a book, go to writeabookforyou.com, spelled all the way out.
It's a great
URL. At the bottom of that page, there's a link to my calendar if you want to talk to me more about what you're working on.
Beautiful. And you're on Facebook, Instagram, like different social platforms?
Yep. LinkedIn. Yep. Facebook,
Okay.
Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn.
Okay.
Did I
And
say
then,
that? Yeah. So
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. I will share those links in the show notes.
Okay.
Any parting words you want to share with the audience? Usually I don't ask that, but I feel like I want to ask
Yeah.
that to you. If you have any final message you want
Sure.
to share with people.
Don't ever give up. And if you have been thinking about writing a book, but you haven't done it, ask yourself why. You do have a legitimate message to share. If you are wondering whether people will care, yes, they do. The longer you deny someone from hearing your message, the longer you're not serving them.
Beautifully said. Absolutely beautifully said.
Thank you.
Awesome, Brian. Thank you, man. I appreciate you being here. If you watched this episode and you got value out of it, please share it with a friend or family member, especially if it's someone out there that you've heard them say it something, because I feel like you hear all the time someone say, I should write a book. I need to write a book. Like that's something that a lot of people say, but very few people do. But I think it's like you said it perfectly. The longer you don't share that message is like you're not serving your purpose, and then you're not serving the world with your message. So you're almost doing a disservice to the world by not getting your message out there. So if you've watched this and you're like, hey, maybe there's an opportunity for me to get my story out there in the form of a book, this is your guy to do it. Brian, man, thanks for the friendship. Thanks for being a guest on the podcast. And I will see you all in the battlefield.